Claude Giroux, former captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, is going to his offseason home and the Ottawa Senators on a 3-year deal with a $6.5 million AAV. We've got lots in the hopper here, and I'll be back with you just in a few minutes when I have more.
All right, so the big one that stands out there, obviously, the Leafs getting Ilya Samsonov on a 1-year, $1.8 million deal. But let's get to our friend Matt Larkin here in just a second to talk about that Claude Giroux signing. We talked earlier in the show and we've been speculating for months that Giroux in Ottawa made a lot of sense. Like Frank said, his off-season home is there. It ends up being a 3-year contract at $6.5 million per season. Matt Larkin, your initial reaction to this?
Well, if you see, I have my glasses on. I'm deep in thought. I've been thinking for a long time that Claude Giroux to the Ottawa Senators was going to be a perfect fit because if you look at this franchise, they've reached that critical mass of prospects. Their farm system is absolutely stacked. It's right up there with the LA Kings, among the very best in the NHL. So it's time now to start pushing forward. But how are you going to do that? You need that veteran leadership to help the young guys like Tim Stützle, Josh Norris. And in Claude Giroux, that's exactly what you have. He very much can still play. Let's get that clear. He can play in all different situations. He's great on faceoffs. He can play either wing, but also he's going to bring that leadership. He's going to form a top 6 role, probably get a lot of power play time, but he's also going to mentor these young guys, teach them how to win. So for so many reasons, hockey-wise, it makes sense. And for him, of course, personally, he calls Ottawa his home. I know he's from Hearst, Ontario originally, but Ottawa is his current home in the offseason. So it's just a great fit for him, I think, in every possible way, geographically and hockey-wise.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of where Ottawa is as an organization as well, like going out and even getting Cam Talbot, right? Like that kind of shows they're shifting into win now mode in a way, moving on from a prospect like Gustafsson to get a guy like Talbot who still only has the 1 year on his deal. Like that's a guy who's an unrestricted free agent or is in line to be a UFA next summer. So Ottawa's making moves. And the interesting thing, Matt, even after this Giroux signing, Cap Friendly has them with just over $15 million or almost $16 million in cap space. There's a chance they might not be done. I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking for a D-man.
That's right. It seems that Pierre Dorian's been sitting on this cap space and weaponizing it. And of course, Ottawa also bringing in Alex DeBrincat last week. So they're really loading up. Cam Talbot, I think it's just a low-risk deal. Like you said, he's going to be a UFA soon. So if it doesn't work out, it's no big deal. But he's a proven veteran. He can be a starter or at least form a tandem with Anton Forsberg. And in terms of that hunt for a defenseman, we know Mackenzie Weegar is the name that has been mentioned and linked to the Ottawa Senators. If they bring in him, then all bets are off in the Atlantic Division. I was joking on Twitter today. Are we going to have to hand out 6 playoff spots? That division is already so competitive. And it looked like the Boston Bruins were finally going to lay down and step aside, but they're bringing back Patrice Bergeron. They might be bringing back David Krejci. They trade for Pavel Zacha. So who's going to miss the playoffs in the Atlantic Division? It's getting crazy out there.
Yeah, it's going to be a wildly competitive Eastern Conference, I think, and that's not really something you could have said last year. I want to go back to the Claude Giroux signing. That's really the first real big impact thing we've seen come across since the window opened 12 minutes ago here. But Mike, your thoughts on Giroux going to Ottawa and giving them a veteran presence for a pretty young and talented forward group?
This is a big deal in Ottawa. And I think that Matt Larkin hit on a lot of things that are really pressing here, that Pierre Dorion, the GM of the Ottawa Senators, has proven to players now at this stage that they want to win. And you do that by making the moves you do, like shedding the bad Matt Murray contract, by bringing in DeBrincat, by bringing in Talbot. Now suddenly you have space and you have a belief. If you're Claude Giroux and you're looking at the Senators, maybe it's 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, you're going, I really want to play at home, but I just don't believe in this team yet. Well, that's different now, especially because there's still cap space. Now, the question is, are the Sens going to spend? And we still have the Eugene Melnyk hangover, okay, where the expectation is just be at the floor, try to get through things. Well, I think it would put this very bluntly, man. This is what happens when managers are allowed to manage. Pierre Dorion doesn't have an eye over his shoulder and an owner anymore that's involved in every decision that has to be made. And these types of things can happen now. So basically what we've seen is a complete change, at least in terms of perception, from the outside, that Ottawa is now a team that is a desirable location to play. You've got Brady Tkachuk there as your captain. Like, there's young parts. There's people to believe in. So I'm happy for everyone in Ottawa. This is cool, man. Like, they may not be in playoffs next year, but guys, I sure expect them to be knocking on the door now.
Yeah. Scott, your thoughts on the Giroux signing with Ottawa?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting, and it will be a real challenge now for DJ Smith, the head coach. I have been around the game long enough. When I first started in sports, DJ Smith was a captain of the Windsor Spitfires. Oh my gosh, how long ago was that? But when you look at this forward group that Claude Giroux joins, and of course with Alex DeBrincat coming in, but Drake Batherson is such a good young player, and Tim Stutzel, and of course with Brady Kachuk there. The real challenge now becomes in making that transition from, as Mike mentioned, a team that where the expectations were really low. There was a lot of chaos around the team, generally emanating from the ownership position. That's gone now. The expectations are going to be very different. That's the challenge, I think, for DJ Smith and his coaching staff and the development staff and everyone connected there is, can you capitalize on what is now the most talent we've seen there since their last playoff run 4 or 5 years ago? Can you take that step forward in terms of your attitude, in terms of how you play the game, how you respond to adversity? Because it's no longer just enough to say, well, it's the Senators, they're young, you know, this is what we expect. The expectations are way different now. Claude Giroux is going to be a big part of that, but he's been through it in Philadelphia, where there were, that team never could gain the kind of traction for the most part while he was there to capitalize on what was happening. I think this is a great fresh start for him, and I think he's going to be a pivotal part of what should be some exciting times in Ottawa. That fan base certainly deserves it.
That Claude Giroux has a 3-year deal with the Ottawa Senators. To break that down a little bit further, let's bring in Chris Gear for another edition of Gear's Grades. Mike and Scott gave their thoughts on that. Chris, it is a Ottawa team that is looking to take the next step forward in sort of their evolution. What do you think of Giroux being the guy that they signed for $6.5 million, a pretty penny?
It's a pretty penny, but this is a guy that had 65 points this year. He's almost just lock it in for about 20 goals and 60 to 70 points. At some point in his career, that might slide a little bit, but I think this is an exceptional deal for Ottawa to keep it to 3 years. 6.5 is a cap hit they can manage. And as Mike and Scott were discussing, this is a guy that oozes leadership. He's going into a team that's got a lot of young stars that are really going in the right direction. But he can be a guy that just further molds them and further helps them reach their ceiling. And so I love what Ottawa's been doing this offseason to go get DeBrincat, to bring in Talbot, and now Giroux. Just fantastic. I mean, this is an A all day for me. I really like it.
Yeah, and I mean, you add Giroux to DeBrincat and Talbot, all of that. It's been an impressive offseason so far for GM Pierre Dorion out in Ottawa. We'll bring you back, Chris, when we get a few other big signings, which we're expecting here in the next little bit.